I regret cheating on my husband. I'm homeless now. Email. Hi, true story. Here I am sitting in a public library using their Wi-Fi and typing this email to you because my life has fallen apart in ways I never imagined. I want to tell my story straight through. How I met my ex-husband, how I ruined everything, and how I ended up where I am now. I'll warn you, it's long, but I feel like it's the only way I can get this weight off my chest. And maybe, just maybe, if one man listening can understand that I really did love my husband, despite my horrible mistake, then at least some good will come out of me sharing my shame. It was 2020. The world was locked down. Everybody was online, and for someone like me, who was always more introverted, being forced indoors didn't bother me at first. But after a few months, the loneliness hit me harder than I expected. I had just broken things off with my ex-boyfriend a few months before the pandemic. That relationship was toxic in every sense of the word. We fought constantly, broke up, and got back together more times than I can count. So, when I met Michael, that's my ex-husband, online during one of those Facebook quarantine groups, it felt different. He was sweet, funny, and patient. He didn't try to rush me. He asked about my day, listened when I vented, and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe with someone. We started doing those long, late-night FaceTime calls where you fall asleep with the phone still on. He lived about 2 hours away from me, but since nobody was really traveling anyway, it didn't feel like a big deal. By summer of 2020, restrictions started to ease a bit, and we finally decided to meet in person. I'll never forget the first time he pulled up to my apartment. He got out of the car with flowers in his hands, wearing this nervous smile like a teenage boy. I couldn't believe someone like him wanted me. From that moment on, we were inseparable. Michael had this calming energy about him. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't trying to impress me with money or cars. He just made me feel important. He'd cook for me, rub my feet after long days, and always tell me I was beautiful, even when I was in sweatpants and messy hair. By early 2021, he proposed. I know some people would say it was too soon, but when you've spent months in lockdown together, talking every single day, it felt like we had already lived through years as a couple. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small, just close friends and family because the pandemic was still lingering. But it was perfect. For once in my life, I felt like everything was falling into place. I truly believed I had found my forever person. The first year of marriage was great, but sometime in year 2, I started slipping back into bad habits. I had reconnected with my ex-boyfriend through social media. At first, it was innocent. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" message. Michael never told me not to talk to him, but deep down I knew it was inappropriate. My ex had this way of pulling me back in. He knew my weak spots, the exact words to say to get me emotional. And instead of shutting it down, I entertained it. I lied to myself, telling myself it was just closure, that I was strong enough to keep boundaries. Then came the night that destroyed everything. One of my girlfriends invited me out for drinks. Michael was working late, and I figured it would be harmless. I hadn't been out in months, so I let myself indulge. What I didn't expect was for my ex to be there. Seeing him again in person opened up old wounds. Add alcohol on top of that, and I lost control of myself. One drink turned into 4. One laugh turned into leaning too close. And before I knew it, I had done the one thing I swore I'd never do. I slept with him. I woke up the next morning sick to my stomach, realizing the nightmare I had just created. I told myself it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, but deep down, I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. For a couple of weeks, I tried to bury it. I acted normal around Michael, cooked dinner, kissed him goodnight, but the guilt ate at me. I couldn't look him in the eyes without feeling like a liar. Finally, one night I broke down crying and confessed. I told him everything. that I ran into my ex, that I drank too much, and that I made the worst mistake of my life. I thought maybe my honesty would mean something, but all it did was shatter him. Michael kept repeating the same phrase. You keep playing games with me. You lead me on. Then you run back to him. I'm done being your toy. I begged him to understand that it wasn't like that. I wasn't running back to my ex. I didn't even want him. But Michael didn't believe me. To him, it wasn't just about one night. It was about trust, and I had destroyed it. When he filed for divorce, I fought it with everything I had. I wrote him letters. I went to therapy. I even dragged myself to church hoping prayer would somehow undo what I had done. I wanted to prove to him that I was serious, that I wanted our marriage more than anything. But it was no use. Every time he looked at me, I saw the disgust in his eyes. I had become the one thing he feared most, a woman who could say, I love you, while stabbing him in the back. The divorce was brutal. Court dates, paperwork, endless arguments. When the judge finalized it, I felt like my soul had been ripped out. I walked out of that courthouse a single woman again, but I didn't feel free. I felt empty. True story. If you decide to read this, I want to take a moment to speak directly to your listeners, especially the men who've been through betrayal. I am sorry, truly. I know my apology doesn't fix anything, and it won't undo the pain you felt. But I need you to hear it from me, a woman who ruined her marriage with one selfish, drunken decision. Cheating isn't just a mistake. It's a choice, and it leaves scars that never fade. To my ex-husband, if he ever hears this somehow, I did love you with all my heart. I know it doesn't matter anymore, but I need you to know that my love was real, even though my actions said otherwise. After the divorce, I had nowhere to go. I stayed on my cousin's couch for a while trying to pick up the pieces, but that turned into another nightmare when her husband started making inappropriate advances toward me. When I rejected him, he turned it around on me and claimed I was the problem. Next thing I knew, I was asked to leave. With no money, no family to turn to, and no real friends left, I ended up in a women's homeless shelter. That's where I'm writing this from, the lowest point of my life. Life on my cousin's couch. After my divorce, I had nowhere else to go. My parents are gone. My mom passed when I was young, and my dad remarried and basically disappeared from my life. I don't have siblings I'm close to, and most of my old friends sided with Michael after the divorce. So my cousin Amanda was really the only person willing to take me in. She lived with her husband and 2 kids in a small 3-bedroom house. When I arrived with nothing but a couple of bags and the clothes on my back, she hugged me and said, "We'll figure it out. Don't worry." At first, it wasn't too bad. I slept on their couch in the living room. I tried to make myself useful. I cleaned, cooked meals when I could, watched her kids so she could run errands. But the truth is, I was a burden. Her husband, Dave, never liked me being there. He was polite at first, but I could feel the tension. He'd make comments under his breath about how grown women should be able to stand on their own 2 feet. I ignored it, but deep down I knew he was right. I was 38 years old, divorced, broke, and living like a teenager who couldn't handle life. Still, I thought if I stayed quiet, eventually I could save up some money and get my own place. I even started working part-time at a diner nearby. The pay was minimum wage, but at least it was something. One night, Amanda was working late, and I was home with the kids. Dave came home from work, had a few beers, and started talking to me in a way that made me uncomfortable. "You know, Nancy," he said, "you're too pretty to be sleeping on couches. I bet you could have any man you want." I laughed it off, thinking maybe he was just trying to make conversation. But then he sat down too close to me. His knee touched mine, and when I shifted away, he smirked. "You know what I mean," he added. My stomach turned. I made an excuse to check on the kids and avoided him for the rest of the night. I told myself it was just the alcohol talking, that I was imagining things, but I knew better. Over the next few weeks, his comments escalated. He'd compliment me when Amanda wasn't around. He'd linger in the kitchen while I cooked, brushing past me too closely. Once he even joked that if I was so lonely, he could keep me company. I started to dread being alone in the house with him. I'd stay late at work just to avoid it. Amanda never suspected anything. She trusted her husband, and she thought she was helping me by letting me stay. I didn't know what to do. If I told her, she might think I was lying or trying to break up her marriage, and if I confronted him, I risked being kicked out. I felt trapped. It all came to a head one night when Amanda and the kids were out of town visiting her in-laws. I was at the house alone, and Dave came home drunk. He sat down next to me on the couch and started talking about how unhappy he was in his marriage, how Amanda didn't understand him anymore. I tried to get up, but he grabbed my wrist. "You're not going to tell her," he said. "I know you won't." My heart was pounding. I pulled away and told him to leave me alone. He laughed and said, "Relax, I'm just playing." But the way he looked at me told me it wasn't a joke. The next morning, Amanda came home, and before I could even process what had happened, Dave told her that I had been flirting with him. He twisted everything, making it sound like I was the problem. Amanda confronted me, and when I tried to explain, she shut me down. "You need to go, Nancy," she said coldly. "I can't have you causing problems in my marriage." That was it. No discussion, no second chance. She helped me pack my bags, and within an hour, I was standing on the sidewalk with nowhere to go. I checked into a cheap motel with the little cash I had left from work, but that only lasted a couple of nights. After that, I was out of options. I tried calling around, distant relatives, old friends, but nobody answered or they made excuses. The truth is, when you're a woman who cheated on a good man, people lose respect for you. They see you as untrustworthy, like you can't be relied on. I felt like damaged goods. With nowhere else to go, I walked into a women's shelter downtown. It was humiliating. I'd always judged people who ended up there, thinking they must have made terrible choices, and now I was one of them. The shelter was not what I expected. It wasn't warm or welcoming. It was crowded, noisy, and tense. Women from all walks of life were there, some escaping abusive relationships, others battling addictions, others just down on their luck, like me. We slept in a large room with bunk beds lined up wall to wall. Privacy didn't exist. You had to keep your belongings in a small locker, and even then, things still went missing. Meals were basic: soup, bread, sometimes rice and beans. We had to line up like kids in a cafeteria, and there was a strict curfew. If you didn't check in by 9 p.m., you lost your bed for the night. The worst part was the feeling of shame. Every morning I'd see women getting dressed to go to jobs, trying to hold on to some dignity. I tried to do the same, but inside, I felt broken. Despite the hardships, I did meet some women who reminded me I wasn't alone. There was Maria, a single mom with 2 kids who worked 2 jobs and still couldn't afford rent after her husband left. She told me, "Don't give up. This isn't forever." There was also Denise, a recovering addict, who spent her evenings reading the Bible out loud to anyone who would listen. She told me that hitting rock bottom was sometimes the only way to rebuild. Hearing their stories helped me put mine in perspective. Yes, I had cheated and ruined my marriage, but I wasn't the only woman in the world who had made mistakes. Still, the shame ate at me. I couldn't stop replaying Michael's words in my head. "You keep playing games with me. You lead me on, then you run back to him." Was he right? Did I use him as a safety net while still entertaining my ex? I wanted to believe I hadn't, but looking back, maybe I did. Maybe I craved the attention, the validation, and now the price was everything: my marriage, my family, my stability. There were nights in the shelter where I cried myself to sleep, clutching the thin blanket they gave me, wondering how I had gone from being a wife with a home to being a woman in a homeless shelter. Eventually, I forced myself to start making small changes. I got a second job cleaning offices at night. It was exhausting, but it meant I could save up a little money. I started attending group meetings at the shelter about rebuilding after trauma. I even wrote a letter to Michael, not to win him back, but to apologize again. I don't know if he'll ever read it, but I needed to say it one last time. I realized that for too long, I had defined myself by who I was with: a girlfriend, a wife, a cheater, a divorcee. Now I had to figure out who Nancy was without a man. True story. The reason I'm writing all this out in such detail is because I want people to understand that cheating doesn't just break marriages, it breaks lives. It doesn't just hurt the person you betrayed, it destroys your own future too. I loved my husband, but I didn't protect our marriage the way I should have. And now I'm paying the price every single day. I don't know what's next for me. Maybe I'll get back on my feet. Maybe I won't, but I do know this: I will never again take loyalty and love for granted. To every man listening, I want to say again, I'm sorry. I know some of you will hate me after hearing this, and that's okay. I deserve it. But maybe, just maybe, one woman will hear my story and stop herself before making the same mistake. Shelter life, the turning point. When I first entered the shelter, I treated it like a punishment. I was ashamed, bitter, and constantly comparing myself to the women around me. I thought, at least I'm not like them. But then I realized we were all the same. Different circumstances, different mistakes, but the same outcome. No home, no stability, no one to lean on. It hit me one night when one of the women, Denise, the one who always read the Bible out loud, looked at me and said, "You keep looking around like you're above this, Nancy, but you're here just like the rest of us. Stop pretending." Her words stung, but they were true. That was the turning point. I stopped thinking of myself as better and started looking at myself honestly. I was homeless. I was divorced. I had burned bridges. That was my reality, and until I owned it, I couldn't move forward. I had been working 2 part-time jobs, the diner during the day and cleaning offices at night. It was exhausting. My feet hurt, my back hurt, and there were nights I barely got 3 hours of sleep before starting over again. But as draining as it was, those jobs gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. I wasn't just sitting in the shelter waiting for life to change. I was working towards something, even if it was just a few crumpled bills in my pocket. I started saving, slowly. First $50, then $200, then $500. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Money wasn't my only struggle. The bigger battle was inside my own head. I carried so much guilt and regret over Michael, I couldn't stop replaying. The night I cheated, the look on his face when I confessed, the moment the judge finalized the divorce. At the shelter, they offered free counseling sessions once a week. At first, I avoided them. I thought, what's the point? A counselor can't change the past. But eventually, I went. My counselor, a woman named Carla, told me something that stuck with me. Guilt can either crush you or guide you. The difference is whether you let it stop you from moving or let it push you to do better. That hit me hard. I realized I had been living like guilt was a chain around my neck. Instead, I had to use it as a reminder of who I didn't want to be anymore. One of the things Carla suggested was writing letters, not to send, just to get my feelings out. So I started writing letters to Michael. I wrote about how sorry I was. I wrote about how much I still loved him, even though I knew I'd never get him back. I wrote about the little things I missed, how he used to hum when he cooked, how he'd always reach for my hand when we crossed the street. Filling notebooks with those letters didn't change anything between us, but it changed me. It helped me grieve, to let go little by little instead of clinging to a ghost. After about 6 months in the shelter, I finally had enough money saved to rent a room in a shared house. It wasn't glamorous. It was a small stuffy room with a twin bed and a dresser that wobbled when you opened it. But it was mine. I can't describe the feeling of turning the key and walking into that little room for the first time. After months of bunk beds and curfews, having four walls to myself felt like freedom. I cried that night, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Living in the shelter taught me lessons I'll never forget. Stability is fragile. One mistake, one wrong choice, and everything can collapse faster than you think. Pride will kill you. Thinking I'm better than this doesn't change the fact that you're in the same sinking boat as everyone else. People matter more than things. I used to care about appearances, what I wore, what car I drove, what people thought of me. Now, I'd trade all of that for one solid, trustworthy relationship. I'm not going to pretend I became some saint overnight, but being around women like Denise made me curious about faith again. I started reading small passages of the Bible, not to check a box, but because I needed something bigger than myself to believe in. There's a verse I stumbled on that says, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." I clung to that because I was brokenhearted, wounded, and desperate for healing. I'm still figuring out where I stand spiritually, but for the first time in years, I feel like maybe God hasn't given up on me. One thing I realized during all of this is that I don't need a relationship right now. For so long, my identity was wrapped up in being somebody's girlfriend, somebody's wife. I went straight from one man to another without ever being alone. Now I'm learning to sit with myself, to be Nancy, not Michael's wife, or the woman who cheated. Just Nancy. It's lonely sometimes, but it's also freeing. I don't have to worry about disappointing someone or trying to make up for the past. I just have to take care of me. Right now, I'm still working both jobs, but I've managed to cut my debt in half. I'm saving slowly, and I'm even looking into going back to school for medical billing. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and that's all I want now, stability. I've also started volunteering once a week at the shelter where I used to live. At first, it was hard to go back there, but now I see it as a reminder. I sit with women who feel hopeless, and I tell them, I was here once. You can get out too. It feels good to give back, even in a small way. Since the divorce, I hadn't spoken to Michael or anyone in his family since that day in court. In my mind, I figured they all hated me, and honestly, they had every reason to. But as I started rebuilding, especially after I moved out of the shelter and into a rented room, I found myself missing something deeper. It wasn't just Michael I grieved. It was the whole family I had married into, his mother, his sisters, even his cousins. Michael's mom, Mrs. Evans, was always kind to me in the beginning. She welcomed me with open arms, called me her daughter, and treated me like family. I'll never forget how she held my hand before the wedding, telling me she was happy her son had found someone who loved him. And even though I had betrayed Michael, there was a part of me that still longed for that maternal connection. My own mother died when I was young, and I'd never really had that kind of relationship with another woman since. So one day, after weeks of going back and forth, I decided to reach out. I called her. My heart was pounding the whole time, expecting her to hang up the second she heard my voice, but she didn't. She was quiet at first, then finally said, "Nancy, why are you calling me?" I stumbled through my words, telling her I just wanted to talk, that I missed her, that I was sorry for everything. There was a long silence on the other end before she finally agreed to meet me for coffee. When I saw her, it was like no time had passed. She looked the same, warm eyes, silver hair, that calm presence she always had. But when she saw me, her smile didn't reach her eyes. We sat down, and for the first 15 minutes, it was polite small talk. She asked about my health, my job, where I was living. I told her the truth, that I was renting a room, working 2 jobs, and trying to get back on my feet. Then the conversation shifted. She asked, "Why are you really here, Nancy?" And that's when I broke down. I told her I missed family, that I had no one, that I wished I could turn back time. I admitted I still loved her son and regretted everything I had done. She listened quietly, nodding, but her face was unreadable. Finally, she said, "Nancy, you didn't just hurt my son. You destroyed him. You broke him in a way I've never seen before. Do you understand that?" Her words cut deep. I nodded, crying, saying over and over that I knew, that I was sorry. The invitation. Here's where things took a turn. Toward the end of our meeting, Mrs. Evans said something that gave me hope. She said, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Nancy, but I believe in helping people who are trying to change. If you need a place to stay, my door is open, for now." I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was offering me a place to stay? I thanked her over and over, hugging her tightly. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone. I moved into her guest room the following week. At first, it felt like a blessing. I had a bed, a roof, and someone who treated me like a human being again. I cooked dinner to show my appreciation, cleaned the house, and tried to stay out of her way when she needed space. But underneath the surface, there was tension. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with this mix of pity and anger. She never said it outright, but I could feel it. She still saw me as the woman who broke her son's heart. And honestly, she was right. It all came crashing down one evening. We were sitting in the living room after dinner, and I made the mistake of bringing up Michael. I said something like, "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" Her face hardened immediately. "Nancy, don't you dare talk about him like that. You had your chance with my son. You threw it away." I tried to defend myself, saying it was a mistake, that I was drunk, that it didn't mean anything. But she snapped, "Stop making excuses. You didn't just trip and fall into another man's bed. You chose to betray him. You chose to destroy your marriage, and now you want sympathy. From me?" Her words hit me like a slap. I tried to explain that I wasn't asking for sympathy, just forgiveness, but she kept going. "You don't understand what you did to him. He stopped trusting people. He told me he'll never marry again because of you. My son, the kindest man I know, was broken by your selfishness. And you sit here in my house asking me if he'll forgive you?" At that point, I broke down sobbing. I told her I knew I was horrible, that I hated myself every day, that I was just trying to survive. But instead of softening, she grew colder. "You need to leave, Nancy. I thought maybe you had changed, but you're still the same. Still trying to center yourself, still making it about your pain instead of his. I can't do this." Her words crushed me. Within an hour, I was packing my bags again, standing on the curb with nowhere to go again. That night, sitting in a cheap motel with the last of my savings, I realized something painful but necessary. I can't keep trying to crawl back into the past. I wanted Mrs. Evans to see me as her daughter again, to give me the love and forgiveness I craved. But in doing that, I was once again making everything about me. She was right. I wasn't thinking about how my presence might be hurting her, reopening wounds for her son. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people you hurt is to stay out of their lives. That experience taught me 3 big lessons. Forgiveness isn't owed. Just because you apologize doesn't mean people have to forgive you or let you back into their lives. Moving forward means letting go. I can't rebuild my life while still clinging to the people I destroyed in the past. Healing is lonely. I kept looking for someone else to fill the void. Michael, his mother, anyone. But healing has to come from me. After leaving Mrs. Evans's house, I went back to my rented room. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I picked up extra hours at work to cover the motel cost I had wasted, and I'm back to saving again. It hurts knowing I burned yet another bridge, but maybe that was necessary. Maybe I needed that harsh wake-up call to finally stop looking backward. Now I'm focusing only on the future, my jobs, my savings, and hopefully school. No more chasing forgiveness from people who don't owe me anything. True story, I share this part of my journey because I want people to understand that consequences don't just end with a divorce decree. They ripple out, touching families, mothers, friends, and even years later, they can slam into you when you least expect it. I wanted Michael's mother to love me again, to give me shelter and comfort, but what I really needed was to face the truth. The past is gone, and it's not my place to insert myself into their healing. It was painful, humiliating, and another rock bottom moment. But this time, instead of spiraling, I'm choosing to learn from it. I don't know if I'll write again, but if I do, I hope it will be from a place of strength, not desperation. Thank you for listening once again. Sincerely, Nancy.